There was an interesting post by a fellow artist on Instagram that I saw and reacted to, and it sparked an interesting conversation, and I wanted to talk about that in this video. I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm an artist and art instructor and sculptor. The video that we're going to be talking about was created by Steve Winterburn. So the video starts out and it has a banner over the top that says, apparently I'm not an artist. And then below it flashes some comments. Comments like, yes, you produce awful kitsch art despite your skills. Sorry to say, has nothing to do with whatever nonsense others do. You just obviously didn't go to college to learn how to be artistic. You're doing just craftsmanship, not art. Well, I'm not seeing an artist, I'm seeing a frustrated sculptor. And here you're making wolves and humans from TV shows never seen before. Can literally be done with a 3D printer. I hate it when people give themselves the title artist. You are a sculptor. Oh, that's funny. Arts and craftsmanship are not the same. The statue of a wolf says wolf. Its meaning is evidential, not abstract. You're confusing art with craft. You're a crafts person. So those are some of the comments that just flash below. Then it says, time to try something new, I guess. And the video is very funny. It's a funny video, kind of tongue-in-cheek, where he's kind of mimicking some of these fine art displays of people doing ridiculous things. So on this viral video, I commented, and on Instagram I have the most liked comment. It did get me thinking, and so my comment was, for my experience, art education today is more about teaching students how to justify bad art rather than the more difficult task of teaching them to create good art. As of this recording, that comment has like 3,200 likes, something like that. So let's go through some of the responses to that comment. Steve Winterburn said, this is scary, with a laughing emoji. A lot of people that said something like, sadly, I agree with you. Somebody says, I could not get through art school. That was my impression. Transferred to a different degree in the second year, still making art though. This is exactly what I was told at uni, hence why I left the course. And then here we get to somebody that disagrees. This says, for my experience, art education was teaching us to make conscious decisions in our art making process, do the intellectual groundwork before you put in a lot of labor, so the hours of craftsmanship have meaning to the artist and don't just produce home decor. And then continuing this comment, this person said, we also talked a lot about how distinction between art and craft is heavily influenced by Western patriarchy and therefore shouldn't apply to contemporary world. Maybe you were sick that day. And so I responded to that, Western patriarchy, a perfect example of an educated person who learned how to justify bad art. Thanks for proving my point. And then they responded, well, people who accuse this artist of craftsmanship have their views and tastes of art formulated by Western culture. Oh, interesting. So now she's saying, she's like flipped sides. So she went from saying that the people that were criticizing this have a point because it's the intellectual groundwork behind the art that is really what matters. And then when I said, oh, well, that's a perfect example of somebody who learned how to justify bad art, then she switched and said, oh, the people that are criticizing him, those people have their views constructed by the Western culture, Western patriarchy, whatever. And so that got me thinking that a lot of these words or terms that are used commonly, the concepts are purposefully kept so blurred and so obscured that you can basically twist anything to fit into the category. So when this is done with art, when we say, well, anything counts as art and no art is any better or worse than any other art. So my criticism and my experience in art education was that they try to open up the category to be so broad and so all-inclusive, where it's all about inclusivity. We want to include all types, everything into the category of art. But when you include everything, and when you say everything can be a work of art, not only everything can be a work of art, but everything is a good work of art. There's no art that's better or worse than anything else because it's all completely subjective, based on opinion. This is basically the philosophy behind beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So if everything is art, then nothing is. That's the same thing as saying that art isn't anything in particular. It's not anything special, which is to say that art doesn't serve a purpose. The only way that you can say that no art is any better or worse than any other art is to say that it doesn't have a purpose. But even the people that are trying to critique the craftsmanship of other artists, generally the people that make these types of comments are unable themselves to create actually well-crafted works of art. And so they like to give these criticisms, oh, it's kitsch, or it's formulaic, or they'll use these other terms, which are all just basically different ways of saying that it required a lot of skill to develop that ability to produce a work of art like that. But they want to put a negative twist on it, a negative connotation. So they say it's kitsch, or it's, just art for the masses. It's not for us highbrow people that really understand art, something along those lines. So another comment says, shh, you can't let the fine artist hear this. Another person says, over 10 years ago, I was in art school and I can confirm this. From classes with, let's say, more modern teachers, students spent 99% of the time coming up with BS spiels for whatever they brought for presentation. The other 1% were people that thought of it on the spot, worked every time. So basically just learning how to justify whatever it is that you created. Somebody else says, this is exactly what I experienced in art school. Somebody commented, you have no idea what art is, do you? I like that one. Here's another comment that I liked. That's your opinion, not a fact. I'm an art educator amongst related fields. Do you create art, or are you talking out of your ass? What? Well, I'm certainly not doing that. I don't even know how one would begin to do that. I responded, sounds like you've been teaching students how to justify their bad art. Must have struck a nerve. Somebody else says, I did my art degree in my late 30s. It was very little art and mostly left-wing political indoctrination for young people. I was beyond shocked. Yep. Somebody else, whoa, big leap. This one was interesting. I have the same experience. What's more, the university professors I went to looked with disdain and underlying admiration and frustration the work of European exchange students who were clearly demonstrating more advanced technique and skills than almost anyone else at the university. It was, and still is, about the artistic approach and the intentions behind the work regardless of the actual visual art skills. And I responded, exactly, well put. So I wanted to share one of the experiences that I had in a figure drawing class. We had like our big assignment that was supposed to be done by the end of the semester. We finished them and everybody put theirs up on the wall for critique time. And I did a self-portrait figure drawing, and it was a step above the work of the rest of the class, let's say. I've always liked drawing. I like the figure. I'm very interested in it. And so I did a decent job, I like to think, on this drawing. But the reaction that I got from the instructor, and I don't remember exactly what the words were, but basically communicated, okay, so you're good at representing the figure, so what? Like, I was taken aback. I didn't even know what to say at the time, but now thinking back, I should have been like, well, so what? So I win. So mine's the best. So I get the best grade because mine is better than all the other ones. And so I did the best. That's so what? Like, this is a figure drawing class, and if I draw the best figure, then I should get the best grade. And so that's what. I didn't say any of that at the time. But that was the impression, was that they were just like, okay, you've developed the skills that we're supposed to be teaching you in the class, and not doing a very good job of teaching, because most of my art education came from outside of the classroom. Even though I studied art in college and sculpture in college, I learned mostly from books, from YouTube videos, and from sculptors that were actually professional sculptors working in the field. And so there really was this kind of disdain or animosity towards traditional skill building and building up the ability to represent the figure in a naturalistic way, the ability to build upon the wealth of figurative art knowledge that has been accumulated over centuries in Western culture. And I feel like in the arts, instead of saying, okay, we have this wealth of knowledge and information, let's just drink from the well of all of this knowledge, we can produce artists that can create works as magnificent as Michelangelo's David or Bernini's amazing sculptures. Like, we can produce those students if we can just get them to learn the lessons of past masters. Instead of that attitude, it's basically turned to, well, that's just craftsmanship. Just craftsmanship. That's crazy to me. But I know where it comes from. It comes from a place of insecurity and the fact that most of these teachers, most of these instructors are not themselves good artists. They're generally not people that have worked as professional artists, and a lot of them have not even taken the time to develop the craft of figurative representation, even though that's what they're teaching in higher education. So that was kind of my experience. Even though I graduated with my BFA in sculpture and everything, I left with a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. Felt like it was overpriced, that a lot of it was just instructing students how to justify their bad art. Like, this is a bad work of art, and this is what the artist said about that bad work of art, so that he was able to still make money off of selling this junk. And so it was kind of like an emphasis on that the craftsmanship isn't all that important. It doesn't matter that much. And I do think it's out of laziness. It's because of the fact that it is so difficult to become proficient at art, and it's difficult to become proficient at instructing people on how to represent the figure. Now, there's places that do this. There's ateliers mostly that are great institutions that have great instructors. One of the art schools that I'm always really impressed with the student work is the Florence Academy of Art. I think that they do a great job at breaking down the figure, how to represent the figure in a masterful way. The students just look like they've learned about how to really represent the human form with mastery. And the criticism that I hear of that academy is, oh, well, everybody that comes from that academy has a similar style, is what they'll say. But the style is representing the figure in a masterful way, like the ancient masters. And so I'm like, if you're calling that a style, I just call it mastery. And there are places to still get that information, to still learn. I guess I just really liked this video because it juxtaposes Steve Winterburn's art, and you can tell that he's somebody that has worked at his craft, that he has developed the ability to see the forms in space and then represent them in 3D, in clay, that he's somebody that's mastered his craft. And then it juxtaposes that with the people in the modern art scene who are making a mockery of art, of what should be something beautiful and magnificent and impressive and awe-inspiring, something that points us towards the transcendent, that says that there's more to this life than just matter. Because if it was just matter, if it's just clay, like, why is the clay in this shape that looks like a person any better or worse than the clay as it comes out of the package? Like, why is a rock inferior to a sculpted piece of stone? If it's all just atoms, you know, in an indifferent universe, then why does art matter? That's why art is important, is because it does point us to the transcendent, because it says that there's more to this world than just material. And so I just thought that this was a great example of juxtaposing art that's created with this modern philosophy of subjective, like, relativism, and then comparing that with somebody that maybe doesn't have that formal education, but that is producing work that is clearly masterfully done, and they clearly understand their craft. Just the fact that people make fun of this sculptor, this artist, because he didn't have that formal education and they did, and yet, despite not having that formal education, he's able to produce better work than them. I think there's a little bit of jealousy there. And so the only way that you can have the position that art is completely relative is if you believe that art has no purpose. Because as soon as you introduce a purpose or a function to art, that this is what art is for, as soon as you say that art is for something, then there's going to be works of art that fulfill that purpose better and works of art that fulfill that purpose worse. So when people say that no art is any better or worse than any other art, or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, they're really saying that art doesn't have a purpose, that it's meaningless. And I think that's just an extension of the idea that life is meaningless. We're just random bits of matter bumping into other bits of matter on an indifferent planet in a cold, dark universe. It's a philosophy that makes things worse. I think that's a good way to test any philosophy, is if you take this philosophy, this way of looking at the world, and you implement it in your life, does it make your life better or worse? We can do that with art, with subjectivism in art, with relativism in art, and we can say, okay, since they brought in this relativistic framework where they say no art is better or worse than any other art, has art gotten better or worse? Like, has this philosophy improved the art that people that espouse it are creating, or has it diminished the quality of art? And I think it's obvious. People that buy into this, they buy into a philosophy that says, oh, okay, well, if taking the time and exerting the energy to master the figure or master sculpting in clay or in stone or in pastels or with paint, like if taking the time to develop these skills doesn't actually make my artwork worth more, because it's just worth about the same as any other work of art, then why would I take the time to develop these skills? Why would I invest as much time and effort as it takes to become a master if somebody whipping a plate of butter is just as much an artist as I am, when one requires far less effort and far less energy and far less devotion, far less craftsmanship. The other is far more difficult. Like, why would I take the difficult road if there wasn't some benefit at the end, some objective location that I could get to and say, okay, I've become a master at my craft and I've become an artist. Those are some of my thoughts. I just wanted to share that with you guys. I thought it was a fun video, an interesting conversation to have. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, I hope you can stay creative, stay productive. I'll see you in the next video.